Many of you know who I am. Some of you don't. I'm just going to do a quick intro for myself, and I'll introduce Paul in just a second. I've been in the financial services industry for about 25 years. I've run my own firm for about 20 years. We have just an incredible team right now. And maybe some of you know this story, but 20 years ago, I was at a retreat, and we were in this meditation room, and there were 8, 10 people sitting there, and there was one monk, none actually, who was doing the teaching. And we took a little break between meditation sessions, and we were kind of stretching and sitting around in this room, and she looked around and just looked at each one of us serially and said, "You know what? I think you should be a blank." And she came around to me and she said, "You should be a teacher." And so in the last 2 or 3 years, we've always done some education things with our clients, but the last 2 or 3 years we've done a lot more in the community. And we are in the process of launching this. And what this is just a financial literacy program. The thing that you guys responded to in that first email is an 8-section or 8-module course. It's actually 8 modules out of 16 that we've put together. And we are going to go one a month through these 8. And I'm just going to really quickly summarize them. Today, we're talking about financial psychology, kind of money stories. Next month, it's going to be savings and expenses. Month after that, we're going to talk about how to create a budget and sort of automating some of those personal finance things we got to take care of, bill paying, those kind of things. The next month, we're going to talk about looking for advice. How do you choose your team? Who are the people that you want to work with? What are the kind of things you want to do on your own? The next month, we're going to talk about a path to smart borrowing, which means understanding loans and, probably more importantly, understanding specific lenders, some that you want to work with, some that you probably don't. In December, we're going to talk about how to pay off debt. There's 2 or 3 different methodologies that work really, really well. We're going to emphasize one that we like. As long as you're doing it, that's the thing that matters. The method that works for you is the one that's the right one. We're going to tell you the one that we think is our favorite. And in January, we're going to talk about how to read a credit profile. And then again, in February, we're going to talk about education, how to develop skills so that you can raise your income and save more. And so we're going to go through this whole process, but at the end of every single one of these courses, we're going to send you those of you that attend, you can attend any of them or all of them that you'd like. We're going to send you a survey, and we're going to take these courses and we're going to turn them into digital courses. And so it would be really fantastic if you would give us your real honest feedback. Hey, you spent too much time on this topic. I'd really like to go more in depth on that topic. Because that's how we're going to determine what are the things we should focus on in these courses, because we're going to make these available, especially in our own communities, for free to high school students and to some of the community college students out there. And we're going to partner with organizations. We're going to offer these things for free, hopefully in churches and those kinds of things. People that have like groups of people that they work with, we're going to make sure that they have access to just basic financial literacy stuff, some of which we're going to go over today in this financial psychology presentation. Anything in finance has to have disclosures and disclaimers on it. So there's some of you I know very well, some of you I love dearly, some of you I've never met before. So this isn't advice, this is education. We offer advice to people that work with us and who sign our agreements and those kinds of things, but this isn't advice, this is education. So with that, I'm going to introduce Paul. Paul is a self-proclaimed boglehead. I don't know if everyone knows what a boglehead is. John Bogle was the founder of Vanguard, and bogleheads are people that have followed, his writings and the blogs and all the conversations around the right way to do these things, the predictable way, the thing that works the best. He's also personally dedicated to financial literacy, and he's a CFP. And so he's actually doing a lot of this education that we're working with. And so I'm going to introduce him, and he's going to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Jonathan.
You bet.
All right, so we're going to talk about financial psychology today. So as you can see, here's the agenda. It's pretty self-explanatory. And what we're going to talk about today is the psychology of money and how it may apply to you. And the goal of it is to help you create awareness around it and also start working towards your own goals. You can kind of see the little topics here that we're going to cover. So first, let's get into the connection of needs, emotions, and money and how they all interrelate. So Jonathan, take away the next part.
All right. Money is not the most important thing. Money does obviously it affects a lot of things. So I wanted to do this slide when Paul and I were sort of figuring out the best way to present this, because for me, and some of you know me longer than this and don't know this story, but for me, it happened about 15 years ago. And I had actually had, I tipped the scales at about 290. I had not a healthy lifestyle. I had about $160,000 lifestyle and about a $60,000 income, which meant I was digging a hole fairly quickly. And the thing that got me out of it was not a financial thing. I started having a commitment to my health, and that came out of my going skiing once, and I forgot my ski pants, and I said, "So, Dad," my dad said, "Oh, you can just take my ski pants." And I was like, "Your ski pants will never fit me," but they were tight, and that was like sort of my wake up call. Like, oh my God, these are tight. I've got to do something about this, because I had a 2-year-old boy and I had a daughter on the way, and I knew that if I wanted to be around for them when I was older, that's really what I was thinking. I realized that I should be around for myself and for my wife and for the rest of my family, but I was really worried about 2 little kids and keeping up with them. I had to change something. So for me, my gateway was my health. I started exercising every day. That was really incredibly hard at 290 pounds. I started stretching, I started exercising, I started walking, I started eating better, I started drinking less, I started doing all kinds of stuff. And the interesting thing about that is when I did that, and I remember I had a coach, and my coach gave me a list of things that if I just did these things every day, then I get points at the end of the day. That's how did I do that day? And the only thing I was able to tick off for a number of months was I exercised and ate well. I didn't do a lot of the other things. But by doing that, I built a habit, and that habit enabled me to work harder, get healthier. It improved my sense of well-being. I started earning more clients. I started attracting more clients, better clients. I started feeling better about myself. I started being a better husband. My mood changed. Obviously, when my mood changed, I was more optimistic. That actually helped my finances. It also sort of rotated over into my health. These things affect each other, and the habits we develop in one rotate over into the others. They pour over very, very nicely. So thanks, Paul, for indulging me in that one. I think you can take it from there, or wait 1 second.
All right. Well, mine's not as fun as yours, Jonathan, because I'm going to talk a little bit about some educational parts of the presentation. But I'm going to address, what many of you have probably heard of is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And just to provide some background information, or as a refresher, if you have heard of it, it's a theory of human motivation proposed by a psychologist named Abraham Maslow, who back in the mid 20th century created this theory, which he believed was that as humans were motivated to satisfy specific needs. So if you look at the bottom there, you start with physiological needs, and then it goes on from there as you meet those needs. So some of these needs may overlap at any given time, but in a vacuum, it's difficult to focus on the higher ones if you haven't addressed the lower ones. So for example, if you're hungry or starving, you're not going to, and you're preoccupied about getting food, you're not going to care about, companionship, for example. It's just kind of something that you work up to. And then obviously you see the highest one is self-actualizing needs, which means you're reaching your fullest potential. So kind of like in Jonathan's story, he's on that path that becoming happier and feeling more fulfilled in his life and reaching who he's going to be, over the course of his life. The next one is Robert Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions. So before I get into this, though, I want to ask, and you can all put in the chat, how did you feel before joining today's call? I just want you to take a moment to reflect. You don't have to send it to us. You can, but I do want you to just notice maybe what was coming up for you, like what kind of emotions. And you can look at this wheel if it's big enough and kind of get some ideas of what that might be. I'll just give you a brief moment, and then I'll jump into this. And I'll tell you, for myself, I was feeling nervous and excited.
I love it. Excited anticipation. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're excited. It's just financial literacy. I love it, Koala. I love it.
Yeah, great. And I appreciate everybody sharing. And for those that didn't or don't know what they're feeling, I just want to say that there's a range of emotions you can be feeling. So some of you may have felt anticipation, like Jennifer just mentioned. And if you were forced to attend, maybe disgust. Luckily, we haven't heard that yet. Maybe you're feeling that now. I don't know. You could be experiencing other emotions as well. And there's a whole range of emotions you can experience throughout your day. So this is just kind of describing that. And to get a little bit deeper with it, as you can see on the left-hand side there are 8 primary emotions. I like that. Make sure that my Zoom connection. There are 8 primary emotions and different varying degrees of them. So you can see the polarities and also the interplay of these different things. So we have joy versus sadness. Those are polarities. And then you can also see how joy and trust form love and more complex emotions. So it's important to acknowledge and recognize what you feel, as this will impact how you think and behave, which is important in life in general, but we're going to talk about it in the context of money.
So I'm trained. I've been in graduate school for Buddhist phenomenology and Buddhist studies, and one of the fundamental lessons that we learned as a Buddhist student is that humans are preconditioned to shy away from pain and to be attracted towards pleasure. And this is really important specifically in a financial context, because if you put that in the timeline of our lives, there's this, and some of you may have seen this, the marshmallow test. And I realize that it's a good test for some things. It's been kind of debunked for some of the things it's been trying to prove. But the idea behind it is, if you give a kid a marshmallow and say, hey, you can have this marshmallow now, but if I'm going to go away for a little bit, when I come back, if you haven't eaten it, I'll give you another marshmallow. It's just a way to test the need for that immediate gratification, or the ability to postpone your gratification. And if you think about all the things that we're faced with, all the ways we can self-medicate, decisions we can make today that make us feel good, to give us pleasure immediately, that may also potentially take us away from our long-term goals. That's what we're talking about here. We swim in this soup of media, and we're inundated with offers to buy this and do that. And we are met with images of people who do this the right way, or are better at this. And it just drives us emotionally. And we feel this need to do these things. But then when we do them, it can hurt us in the long term. So the idea is just being aware that sometimes the thing you want to do today is not going to be the beneficial thing for you long term. This is a really important lesson to learn young. So I mentioned at the outset the story that I had a $160,000 lifestyle with a $60,000 income. That doesn't work for very long. The only way that works is with debt. And then you got to dig your way out of that. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So how do you avoid that? Well, you do some planning, and we're going to talk about some of those steps here in the next few slides. When we're thinking about how do we form these financial behaviors, we're going to look at these general emotional needs and responses, and we've got to see how they translate into our behavioral, how they translate into behaviors, and how our financial attitudes form. So when you think about the relationships you've had over the years, where have you learned your personal finance habits? I mean, I know that growing up, my parents too were the largest source. But I had a teacher whose name, this was 5th grade, I don't remember the guy's name, Tom Ecker. And he had this goal to give us some basic personal finance, math, balance a checkbook. And this is in 5th and 6th grades. He was great. I liked him. But who else? Environment, grandparents, yeah. High school, that's interesting. I didn't see that. That's really rare when we're talking to people. Most people have to actually seek out a specific class. So when you say, Koala, when you say high school, are you saying like friends in high school, or did you take a class in high school? It was like half of the class or a third of the class. I did that too, actually. It was how to sew a pillow, how to bake escargot, and how to balance your checkbook, all in one class. I've been talking to my parents about this seriously in preparation for building these courses. I've been talking to my mom about what she did. And she and my dad took a night, and they had a conversation, and she took a whole bunch of notes, and she sent me a 3-page document, single space typed. There was all the stuff that they did, including, comparison shopping, and they actually included things like, and I don't know how this tied in, but, teaching me how to set the table had some sort of financial lesson that they were trying to teach. And maybe it was just work ethic for a 5-year-old. It was interesting, but but they were very intentional. I think the reason I am who I am is because they were very intentional about raising a kid, though we didn't have anything, but that understood how to manage what little we had. And that was really important to them.
That's great. So looking at this next one, we have our habits when we also have our knowledge. It does not necessarily means that we act on it, but we know something. So, to differentiate that, do people want to add in the chat what kind of influenced or shapes their financial knowledge? And you can kind of get some hints from the slide, but someone mentioned environment. I wonder if that's a big one of it. But feel free to add that into the chat.
So do you mean environment? You think that's social media? You mean the media environment or the culture environment? What do you mean by environment?
Yeah, I forgot who put that. That's a great point. Yeah, and a big thing I was going to say was like all the messages, how you grew up, all the messages we get, from advertisements, and we're inundated with all these different things that's kind of telling us what money means, how we should value it, how we should use it. It's overwhelming for me, I imagine for most people, and it's hard to sift through all the noise to really know like what to believe in, how we should value it, and how we should act on it and then form the habits that are healthy. So looking at this next one, so this is a general statement that I'm making, and it's my perspective, and maybe Jonathan might feel the same way, but I want to ask, rhetorically, but why is our financial behavior or relationship to money not so healthy in America? Like politics, religion, or sex, discussing money at the dinner table is a bit taboo, maybe not in the Dio household, but in mine it was. When you get into specifics about how much someone makes, or how much they have, or how to manage it, because the concept of money is packed with so much emotional content, and that can be a reflection of self-esteem, self-worth, a number of things. So these barriers make it hard for us to discuss in a healthy, productive way in order to learn from one another. And then on top of it, if we have unhealthy habits in the first place, then who are we to learn from? Like if our parents don't know what they're doing, why should we listen to them? So we develop unhealthy behaviors or relationships to money, which becomes habits over time.
They often say a lot of people that write about success or write about good money habits, they talk about, how you will end up mimicking the people around you. So this is why it's so important, for me as a parent of young kids or middle-aged kids. That's not a thing. Middle school kid and high school kid is to, and I'm not saying I judge their friends or pick their friends, but to be aware of who it is they're hanging out with. And it's important to surround yourself with people that elevate you, don't tear you down. And so how do you do that? Like,
real quick, I just want to interrupt real quick. I was going to say, and it's part of your mission to provide that for people like on this call today too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you. And one of the questions is, how do you pick this? How do you find somebody whose information is worth following? And just a few ideas, and I think this is in the workbook as well, but are they living the life that you want to live? And some of that is are they active in the kind of organizations you would like to be active in, whether that's a church or an alma mater or what have you, do you, when you guys communicate, can you relate to the kind of stories that they share? Do they make sense to you? Does it resonate with you? Do you have the similar values and beliefs? And so some of these people, it can be financial professionals, it could be family members, it could be it could be bogleheads. It could be a group of people that are just getting together and talking about things. You can get some really positive information from people that share a similar set of beliefs. Could be business leaders. It could be someone, it could be someone like us. It could be a personal finance person like that does this every single day. You can find folks. Usually you want to find somebody, I think, that has screwed up. Like they don't have this polished social media image that they're trying to create and trying to attract you because of how beautiful they are. They're real people that are engaged in real issues in the real world. And you can actually learn from those mistakes. They can share where they've screwed up. They can share where they're successful, but they're optimistic and they want to share what they know. That I think is a great place to begin to find those kind of folks. This topic presents a concept of behavioral finance, which is it's rooted in economics as well as sort of cognitive and behavioral psychology. What we're going to do is we're going to explore attitudes, beliefs, behaviors related specifically to money, and whether you tend to run specific money scripts, I think some people refer to these as, that lead to specific misbehaviors.
So yeah, go into this money, what you're talking about, money scripts. Before we get into it, I'm curious. This is a two-part question, but when you think of money, and feel free to throw this in the chat, what's the first thing that comes to your mind, or what motivates your behavior when it comes to finances? So first is what's your association or first thing that comes to mind about money, and then what motivates your behavior when it comes to finances? I'll give it a moment for everybody to share.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Paul. If I could just add a little bit of voice to the conversation, even though I love the chat thread. I'll just have a moment of transparency. I have a lot of avoidance and anxiety around it because my parents, who a lot of people know that we learned how to have a relationship with money with, that was a point of contention in the household. So I learned that money is something that's not fun to talk about. So with that, I'm complete.
Thanks for sharing. Wow. So I'm getting the sense that people kind of fall in one or two camps here when it comes to scripts, because I'm getting the impression that everybody's living this lavish lifestyle. They use money for status, but I could be wrong, and it could be a mix of things. So, but I just want to say that you may notice that your feelings and thoughts fall into one of these categories, and so the ones I was talking about were avoidance and vigilance. So there's 4 basic attitudes that people have towards money called money scripts. We each have a predominant one shaped from our experiences in life. None of them are inherently bad, but it can become a problem if not managed and gets out of control. So it's good to become aware, like we're doing right now, and then they kind of understand how to manage it. If not managed, here's the different ways, as you can see on this slide, how the scripts can lead to problems. They keep us from using money as a way to create security and comfort for us to reach our life goals or our main purpose or what we're really trying to accomplish. So if you identify with one of the scripts that we showed previously and then you see them here again, do you see these kind of problems coming up for you? Feel free to add in the chat or unmute yourself, but see, do these align with, the kind of things that come up for you or something different? We're curious to hear.
The idea of, and this, what Chastity said, the idea that in many families, it's just a forbidden topic.
Yeah.
I'll say this, when I was growing up, it didn't happen every year, but my dad got out the tax returns when I was like 9 and said, here's the tax returns. Like I knew how much we made. It wasn't a lot, but I knew how much we made.
Wow.
And I also knew very early on how much, we paid in taxes. I also knew how much was gifted to us by, our aunt, my mom's aunt to sort of make ends meet. And I knew this stuff early on because it wasn't forbidden in my household. We talked about it, which I've literally never met another human where they were that open about it, which is it's interesting to me because it was totally normal for me, and I kind of thought everyone did it. But the stories I've heard being in this industry for 25 years, I totally agree with what Chastity said. I also wanted to say just reference something that Koala said. Make the decision, but then there's no shame. And I think that's so important. You have to think about it. You got to plan, you decide, and then you can't beat yourself up because you can't predict what the future is going to hold. So maybe you make that investment in something that's at your buddy's company, and it was a mistake because your buddy's partner was a thief, and there's no way you could see that, right? You can't beat yourself up for doing that. You made the decision based on the best information you had. It was within your plan. It was the best thing you could do at the time. You couldn't know. You have to have plan 2, plan B to work out of it. But I love that you said that, Koala. It's great.
And we're going to talk a lot about that too later, Jonathan, about what we can control and what we can't, behavior and outcomes.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite topics. Not the negative part. It's just behavioral finance and sort of the idea that we have these unconscious cognitive and emotional biases that drive our decision-making processes. And there's 3 of them here that are, I think, the most often cited, but there's hundreds of these things. So, mental accounting is kind of when I just had a conversation literally with a client today. And they have $50,000 in a low interest, checking savings account, and they've got $30,000 in credit card debt. Now that makes absolutely and the credit card debt they pay an average of 20% interest on. The money they have over here, they can always tap the credit cards, but if you have $30,000 in 20% interest, you're paying $6,000 a year in interest. And all they have to do is take 30 from this pot and put it over there and pay that debt off, and they save $6,000. And all they're making is a nickel on the money that they have over here. So that is called mental accounting. You have this money in savings, and that money in savings is sacred and it can't be touched. But meanwhile, you're spending $6,000, a year on interest on high interest credit card debts. So mental accounting, money is the most fungible of all commodities. It can be used anywhere. So you can actually line up the best places to use it, and it's rational. It's not emotional. This other one is this anchoring. So anchoring is when you sort of tie a decision to an arbitrary anchor. Like, there's a common belief that and I think Scott might be here. I learned this from Scott. You may not remember this. Actually, it may not have been from you. It might have been someone else in the office at the time. So there's common belief that the amount you spend on your engagement ring is 2 months worth of salary. But at the time, I couldn't afford 2 months worth of salary. And I still did it. So I anchored on that common belief, and that's a mistake. In reality, the amount you pay for an engagement ring is the amount you can afford, right? It's not 2 months. It's not, what your future partner's brother or sister might judge you on. It's what you can afford. And there's a lot of anchoring in investing as well. A stock goes up, Apple goes up, and it reaches $200 a share, and then it drops to 180, and people go, "Oh my God, I've lost all this money because it's down from 200." But that's not really the true value. It is what it is. Don't anchor on that. And then my favorite one, and this is one we run into all the time, and tell me, you can put this in the chat, if you can reference a specific time when you expressed overconfidence. I'm going to express two. There are studies that have been done, academic studies, that say that 90% of drivers think that they're above average drivers. Now, this one is the most interesting, though. 79% of college men think they're above average in bed. Now, I'm pretty sure, and I'm now way outside of college, and I'm absolutely positive that that's false because I've learned a lot of things since college. So, so just there's this tendency to believe that we're really, really, really good at things when we're not. And in fact, the more we believe it, the less true it is, and that's statistical. So in finance, a novice investor picks a few lucky stocks, earns great short-term returns, believes it's because they're geniuses, and then they start doing the same thing again until they lose it all. That's like a gambling effect. Overconfidence is kind of a gambling effect applied to markets when you're investing.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how would you say you would humble yourself if you do have that overconfidence? Like, if you say you have that overconfidence, I'm guessing that you probably wouldn't be able to see it until it's too late. So how can you notice that ahead of time and then humble yourself sooner than later before you mess up real bad?
It's a great question. And I think that it depends on who you read on this. But the answer is, I think the simple answer is, you have to put systems in place. And the systems can't be dependent upon how you feel, right? It can't be dependent on, and when we invest in the office, we think about broad diversification, asset allocation, and rebalancing, because we start with humility. Like, I used to trade options and I used to trade stocks. And what I learned by trading options and trading stocks is sometimes I'm really smart and sometimes I'm a complete idiot. Those things balance themselves out or erase each other very quickly. And then you've paid all kinds of taxes and fees in the process, and you end up in a negative place. So by setting up a process that isn't dependent upon your genius, that's how you invest your way out of that. Now, overconfidence in things like driving, it's just, you have to take the humble pie. Like, you have to actually you have to recognize it's unlikely that I'm the top.
So, my question to you is, are you gonna help us find that system, or are you gonna give us the knowledge to learn how to find it ourselves?
So going through this, I mean, the first step in the whole process is to learn how these things work.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go through, I listed the first eight,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the next 8 months.
Yeah.
Beyond that, there are going to be, we have another eight that are in production as well. And
Right.
three of those are investment related. And so specifically around investing, we're definitely going to talk about that. What are those systems and processes?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to build, what you're doing today is you're building the basic knowledge leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll go through planning, it'll go through some of the decision making, it'll go through debt, it'll go through all the things you have to do before you get to investing. And I know that you want to talk about investing now, because I think we communicated about it before, but maybe we can do it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Jonathan, the one thing I want to add to the overconfidence thing is, obviously experience, having systems in place, but also just learning from people you trust.
Yeah.
So you may have heard the old saying before, only worry about what you can control. Well, when it comes to our psychology, we can only control our behavior. We can't, and we talked about this a moment ago with what you were saying, Jonathan, but and how you shouldn't have shame, but we cannot necessarily control the outcome. There are some examples shown here, but the uncertainty of the outcome is why realtors, well, in the two examples shown here, in terms of putting your house on the market and losing weight, is why realtors and weight loss programs make their money. They try to close the gap between what you can control and the outcome. Whether they're successful or not, that's how they're making money, right? So it's an important concept for when it comes to your relationship to money, so that you gain awareness and become mindful of your behaviors and the impact. So when you're making that investment, like Jonathan was mentioning, at the time that that your plan said to do this certain thing, you do it. That's what you can control. The outcome you can't control, but you're making an informed decision, and you use mindfulness to kind of get where you want to go.
So this is, obviously this is the thing, is you have to be mindful. And one of the very best ways that you can battle the biases in general. And I believe this, and I'm probably the only one in the industry that believes this, except for some of those people in my office. But I believe that mindfulness creates a doorway for reason. And so what do I mean by that? An actual mindfulness practice, sitting and meditating for 10 minutes a day, staring at a wall, looking at your breath. If you are mindful, you can create a space between a stimulus from the outside world. You're at the car dealer and you should be getting this car that's practical, but there's this other pretty one that's faster and a better color or whatever. And you should get this one, and that's what you came for, but there's this other one. And mindfulness goes, you know what? I recognize the stimulus. I recognize the drive for the nicer thing. And I also have to recognize that would take away from some of my future goals. And being aware and mindful in the moment of the purchase decision, of the investment decision. And we're going to get through to some planning here today on a minor basis. But we think about that plan as the thing that you bring your attention back to. Just like when you're meditating, you bring your attention back to your breath. If you have some goals, and you have set out some steps towards that plan to make those goals come to fruition, then you'll be able to make decisions that go towards those goals. And I think that's actually one of the next things we're going to talk about, is this molding of positive financial behaviors. There's 6 stages to this, and I think Paul's going to go into them more specifically.
Yeah, and so before we get into the financial part, I'm curious to hear from people if they want to enter in the chat. Have you all tried to change? And I'm sure you have, but feel free to mention what's the behavior you've tried to change in the past. For example, eating less junk food, exercising more are popular ones. And then once you share, I want you to kind of take a look at the slide here and drinking more water, and just the Whole30 diet, and just whether or not you were intentional about what that process looked like to change behavior. Does this resonate with you, this slide, in terms of the different stages? And I'll get into that in a little bit.
That's still to this day my hardest one.
Me too.
Eating the right things at the right time. Because I'd rather have ice cream at every meal, honestly.
Delayed gratification is hard, man. So, as we all know, going vegetarian, as we all know, to make a change in behavior is really difficult. And in order to change behavior, you have to make them habits, and that's what makes it easier is once you get to that stage of making them habits. So we must first recognize that we want to make a change. We then need to figure out how to do so. Then we need to do it. Then we need to maintain it, and then it becomes a habit, and then it's part of who you are. So easier said than done, but that's kind of the stages of that. We'll break it down a little bit more. So before a change can occur, and you can tell this guy in the picture really wants to make a change in his behavior. You are who you are, exhibiting certain behaviors. You then notice that you don't like something about a behavior and you want to make a change. For example, you're gaining weight and you want to lose weight. So you make a plan for how that will occur. And this all assumes that you don't go backwards, that you don't get distracted, you don't get demotivated, and so forth, which is all completely normal. So that's the first part of this progression. Once the plan is in place, you execute that plan. Again, you may go backwards, or you might stop on the path towards change. Once you've made the change, you try to maintain it until it becomes a habit. And it's more or less out of your conscious awareness when it becomes a habit that you need to work towards. It's part of who you are. Easier said than done, again, but it's how we're able to change our behaviors. So we talked about things that people wanted to change, but were people actually successful in those things? I'm curious to hear success stories about what people were intentional about in changing a behavior. And I'll say for me, I was successful in losing some weight about 2 years ago. When I got I don't know if you have it for men, but when you first become a father, is there a term for that, Jonathan? Like how the sympathy weight, or I don't know what they call it, or just gaining weight when your child's first born?
It's called you're tired and you are eating more and you are doing other things less.
And dad bod,
right? Weight. I think it's called gaining weight for guys.
Father 15.
Father 15. I love it.
Embracing the dad bod. So now that we've covered how to change behaviors, let's take a look about how to apply this to financial goals.
You think about these goals, and it can be basically defined as sort of clear statements of outcomes you want to achieve. Motivation. When you have a goal, it's something that you're working towards. It's something that should be motivational, something that makes you move. Your life is moved towards the thing instead of just floating along into nowhere. Wow, did you guys hear that? No? All right, cool. That's just me. Something crashed in the kitchen above my head. We are all working from home, so we have to deal with the home things as we do this. So when you think about saving versus spending, how much of that check should you save thinking about your future versus spend now and make yourself happy today? Music or new shoes, those sorts of things. For me, I love the new what is the Spotify? Because it's like it's a distinct amount of money every month, but I have access to every single song on earth. I think that's fantastic. Less expensive, but huge reward because we love music around here. And once you've set the goal, once you set the goal and have a plan towards it, you become sort of liberated from worry about it. You know what you're supposed to do. Every month you set a little bit aside, you do the little thing. If it's exercise, that when I wanted to lose weight, I knew that I wasn't going to lose that much weight in a week, a month, a year. I knew that I had to set a plan. I just had to stick to it and just kind of go through the slog. And some mornings, yeah, it's really, really hard, but you just kind of do it, and you don't have to worry about it. You know it's going to work. You just keep going step by step by step by step by step. And at the end of that, you know what the reward is. The reward is attaining that goal. And once you have that all laid out, like on paper, you know what enough looks like. And in our culture, it's more. Getting to know what your enough is believe me, it's an enormous load off. When you know what you need to do to get those things you want to accomplish done, you don't have to do more. You can actually spend more time with family, do more time writing, reading, riding a bike, do the things you want to do, travel, etc. So as it turns out, life is like a is like a really big resource management game. You know, there's inflow, there's outflow, there's today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So when you think about setting financial goals, you kind of start with writing down how you want it all to look. And when I sat down 15 years ago, and I had a 7-month-old, and I was, this is when I was a little bit overweight, and I knew that my health wasn't in good shape, but I also knew that I had a college I had to start planning for, and I knew that we planned on having another kid, so I knew that there'd be another college I'd have to plan for. So you have to organize around what you want to have happen. You have to just say, okay, if I want to have this college thing happen, I got to be able to set aside some money here on a regular basis to put away. And then you have to go back and look and see how you're doing relative to your goal. But you have to put it in a way that you believe it's gonna come to fruition. You have to know that you have this plan that works. And that's the whole resource management, because you can line up all those things in the future that are all the milestones all the way up till that moment where you're creating a retirement income you can't outlive. And once you get through all those milestones and you know what that picture is, what you have to do to get to that retirement income, then you know what you're supposed to do. The stress of oh my God, this financial stuff, the stress of that goes away.
All right, so we talked about, everybody shared some goals that they had. Some people shared some positive experiences. So now let's get to the negative a little bit. So feel free to share some goals that you had that weren't successful. And I'm just curious, and I'll tell you why in a moment.
Wow, that's...
How about you, Jonathan? Are there any goals you set out that you were unsuccessful with?
I shared this with you guys. I shared this with the team. Once we went into lockdown 4 months ago, I said, the thing I'm going to work on, I do this and it's gross, and I don't want to admit it. So I chewed my nails. I chewed my nails my entire life, and I committed that, hey, while I'm in lockdown, I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna stop doing it, and I have been unable to stop doing it. So yeah, there's things I haven't been successful with.
All right, let me ask you this on behalf of the group: is why do you think that is?
Ouch! I don't know.
I'm driving home a point. I'm just not gonna beat up you.
It's been a 20-year goal that I failed at, so I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Nick and Koala. Well, so when it comes to when it comes to setting goals or accomplishing goals, it's important that they have the attributes listed here. The alternative is you have a goal that's vague and you don't really know if you're on the right path or when you're actually achieving it. So when this occurs, it can be demotivating and you end up quitting or giving up. So by being specific and setting up parameters around your goals, you're able to notice the small victories along the way, celebrate them, which reinforces your motivation, and then you stay motivated on your path to completing your goal. It also, goes along with the mantra, and Jonathan, you'll love this, that the journey is just as important, if not more important than the destination, right? Yeah. So these are some important things that you need to take into account when you're trying to accomplish a goal. So maybe if you said, hey, this week I'll only bite it twice, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't fit in that category.
And then decrease it. We did talk about like the success of people having goals. Does anybody? We talked. People shared what the successes was, but anybody want to get more specific in how you would apply these measurable ways of doing it? Meaning, like in Jonathan's case, he might say, "I lost 80 pounds over 8 months, and my goal was 10 pounds a month because I knew I had X amount of hours to spend." Or what? Maybe I'll share a little bit about mine. So. With my weight loss, I did an app called Noom. I'm not promoting it. I don't have any sort of affiliation with it, but it really helped me set out the time length at which I was trying to lose weight and how much each week and how my caloric intake on a daily basis was going to be impacted, as well as the energy I was going to burn. And then also Noom was great I'm not trying to promote it again, but they helped you like psychologically reframe things in your mind so you weren't like beating up yourself along the way. So I was able to measure things, and I measured every day, and I was able to lose X amount of pounds over a certain amount of time period. And I actually did it. And when I saw the success and I was charting it, I was getting reinforcement that what I was doing was going towards the goal I wanted. And I eventually achieved it over the time period that I wanted to. So, looking at this example on the slide here, the goal is I want $500 to go visit grandma for her birthday on a plane. The time period is 4 weeks. So what does that mean? I need to save $125 a week. My paycheck, my expenses allow it to where I can save $125 to go towards that goal. And then it comes to fruition. You buy the ticket, get on the plane, and see grandma. So that's something along the way you can celebrate those accomplishments, but also the final moment of you achieve the goal.
So why is it so important to have these goals? For me, and we talked about this just briefly a little while ago, the goal setting process helps ensure that you know where you're going. Like if you don't have any target at all, you can do anything, and it's just, you're not losing, you're not gaining. The second thing it does for me is it provides you that focal point. Once you have a goal inside of a planning process around a goal, you know the thing you're supposed to be doing. And because you know what you're supposed to do, the catastrophists of the day, the media story, whether it's something like oil crashes, or whether it's something like COVID, or whether it's something like .com, or whether it's something like 9/11, or what we've seen in the last 20 years, a lot of very big, scary catastrophes. And if you know long term how things are supposed to work out, assuming you do these certain things, then you also know that in the interim, no matter what, you do those things. And that's your breath when you're meditating. That is the anchor, your behavioral anchor. These are the things you need to be doing in the interim. So setting clear, time-driven goals helps you make things happen. It helps you stay sane in the midst of the crazy, catastrophic media that will always tell you that it's horrible and bad, because that is what its job is. It used to be, back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, that their job was to inform us. That's no longer their job. Their job is to scare us, to drive us to action. That's why you have the crazy music in the background, and they're driving us against each other. And it's not there to just give you information anymore. It's there to tell a story, to enforce a narrative. So I'm just curious, how many folks here on the call actually meditate? And I mean this seriously. I think that a couple things happen. I've meditated for 25 years, but it was on and off when my kids were younger. And now that I've maybe 10 years ago recommitted to it, and I do it every single day now, it changes everything in my life. When I have that commitment and I do it every day, and I'll actually tell you, what is the app? Insight Timer. So there's a lot of apps. I don't get anything if you go buy Insight Timer. It's actually free, so it's not a big deal. But there are teachers of every ilk on Insight Timer. And you can go and listen to a Buddhist teacher. You can go to listen to somebody that's anything you could possibly imagine. There's some great teachers there you can listen to that are just sort of how to sleep better, meditation teachers. If you just use a timer and stare at a wall for 10 minutes a day and just bring your thoughts back to your breath, it's a huge benefit, because then in the rest of your life, when you walk upstairs and your kids are doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and your initial reaction is to jump all over them. What are you doing? This is crazy. I told you not to do this. Then you can back away from that statement, and you can come up with a better way to get to the same outcome. If somebody at work says something that you would ordinarily just snap and get angry about or get defensive about, you have a moment, you have a space that you allow yourself to make a better decision. Same is true in investing. If you have this practice, and that's why it's a practice, if you have this practice, then when things go sideways, because they're going to go sideways, I don't know what the next thing is going to happen. I don't know what it's going to be. I mean, after COVID, we have to go through COVID first, but after COVID, there's going to be another thing. And when that thing happens, everything in your life is gonna tell you that it's horrible and bad and something's got to change. You got to do something differently, but you don't. So a regular practice of meditation allows you to recognize that the things you're doing are the right things, and you're smart, and you can deal with this, and it's going to be okay. So that's one of the things that's important about setting these goals, is it gives you a target, and then you can course correct towards that target. But those goals shouldn't always be financial. And this is pretty, obvious, but we started out this way. We should finish this way. These goals should be relational. They should be spiritual. They should be health oriented. They should be, reading. They should be writing. They should be career oriented. They should be something in the community, something you're giving back. You should have some fun in your life. Your goals should be part of all these things should be inside the goals. Finance touches some of those, money touches some of those, but you can spend time with your kids and your spouse, your partner without money. You don't need a lot of money to do that. You don't need a lot of money to give back inside your community of your time and your talents. You don't need a penny to meditate. These are all things that can boost self-worth. They can boost happiness. They can boost meaning in your life. So have goals across all of these things. Now, I realize we started a little bit late. So I do want to say thank you to everyone for coming. And anyone that wants to hang out for a minute and ask questions, I'm going to stop sharing.
I was just say, I just have a question just because there are some younger people around my age. What are, once we start in early career, when should we start thinking about retirement and creating our 401k and handling our debt? Because I don't know if any of you guys, we all have a lot of, especially student debt. So do you come across that a lot, especially with working with clients, and the best approaches towards, looking at that debt and getting in control of it and being able to save enough for retirement as well?
I mean, it's actually a critical part of the conversation. What we do, let's put it this way. So the only money that you have the option of doing something different with is the excess that you have coming in, right? You have to pay rent, you got to buy food, you probably have a cell phone. There's a base amount of bills that you have to pay. And then you have above that, you've got some of the wants that you fulfill every single month. And maybe you can cut some of those back and create a little bit more excess, but then above that is the excess. So the question is, what are you going to do with that excess? Are you going to invest the excess in your 401k? Are you going to use it to pay off student loan debt, credit card debt, what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, that question is about what is the rate of interest you're paying on that debt? And what is the probability that what you could do investing in your 401k will outperform that rate? So for you, Sarah,
mm-hmm.
I know that your 401k matches.
Mm-hmm.
And when your 401k matches 5% and you put in 5%, that's 100% right off the gate. So I guarantee that will be better than any rate of interest you're going to pay on your credit cards or student loan debt. So you want to actually do that. You want to actually put money in the 401k and get that match for sure. Then do you want to put 7% because you don't get the match on the last 2%? It depends on the rate you're paying on these things. So the clients we talked to today have 20% interest rate on their credit cards. They shouldn't be investing anything until they pay that off. That should all be paid off. That is just negative. It's bad. Get rid of it. But if it's a student loan debt, there's a couple things. It's probably 6, 7, 8, unless you got a good refi and it's 2. If it's 2, then keep it. Pay it off as slowly as you can for the rest of your life. That's free money. If someone's going to give you debt at 2% or 3%, you never want to pay that off. You want to just pay them as little as you can and build up your capital on the other side.
Oh.
Yeah. But if it's 6 or 7 or 8, then it's kind of on that cusp where you want to kind of do 50-50. You want to pay out, you want to build assets, and you want to pay it down. 20%, you pay that off. That's the first focus of any excess capital. That kind of makes sense as a structure. High interest rate, that's where you put all your excess. Medium-sized interest rate, you might want to split it. Low interest rate, focus on building capital.